Chicago's most violent CEO of violence, went to murder an embezzler, but instead he fell obsessively in love with a monster wrapped in wool. Lorenzo Bianchi controls the docks and illegal gambling rings with lethal precision, and he demands his stolen $40 million back in flesh. But when he tracks the missing cash to a socially awkward, overweight archive ghost, he uncovers a razor-sharp apex predator who holds the digital data detonator to his entire empire. He immediately spares her life and makes her his reigning underworld queen. Welcome to the midnight hour. Tonight you and I are stepping into a massive tragedy that will completely blow your mind. People looked at quiet Penelope Cartwright and decided she was a pushover destined to rot in a boring beige cubicle. Nobody gave her stained cardigans or fake stutter a second thought. But here is a simple life lesson. Never judge a bruised soul by the shadows they wear. Lorenzo Bianchi, the ruthless boss of Chicago's deadliest syndicate, learned that the hard way. He walked in her office expecting a frightened lamb. Instead, he stepped right into the jaws of an apex predator, hiding in plain sight, holding a digital bomb to his empire. She was not his victim. She was his utter downfall. It all started on the 42nd floor of Pendleton Financial. To the average person on the street, this joint looked like a flawless wealth management firm. But to the real players bleeding in the shadows, it was the absolute slickest money laundering machine in the Midwest. Trapped at a crab desk in the suffocating darkness of the archives room was a 26-year-old Penelope. She was basically the ghost of the office, hiding in drab wool sweaters. She kept her eyes glued to the floor whenever anyone spoke. Her toxic co-workers actually called her Pudding Penny behind her back. Her arrogant boss, Arthur, treated her like a slightly useful piece of furniture. Let this be a simple lesson. How you treat the invisible people in your life tells the world exactly who you are. These people were spectacularly failing the basic test of humanity. Arthur had this agonizing habit of dumping totally wrecked ledgers on her desk right before quitting time. On a Friday, he expected them magically fixed by Monday, and Penelope always delivered. She never cried, never asked for a raise, and just pushed up her thick glasses before vanishing into the math. Everyone in that cruel office thought she was desperate for any tiny crumb of validation. But they were deeply wrong. Here is a simple life lesson. The people who stay perfectly quiet are usually the ones paying the most attention. Penelope did not care about Arthur or his useless approval. She only cared about the puzzle. To her, the cold numbers were the only language that never lied, quietly exposing the toxic arrogance of the mobsters and men around her. For 3 years, this girl had been secretly translating the darkest secrets of the Chicago underworld. She knew exactly to learn when she was scrubbing. She memorized every single shell company, the routing digits, and the bribes handed to Judge Harvey Wallace. Most importantly, she saw every fatal mistake her clueless boss missed. But the fragile peace at Pendleton Financial completely shattered on a rainy Tuesday. The heavy oak doors blasted open, and the room temperature dropped to 0. Lorenzo Bianchi had finally arrived. He was a towering force of nature, wearing a custom charcoal suit that perfectly hid the heavy iron of his shoulder holster. The lesson here is simple, true chaos rarely bothers to knock before it kicks your door down. Lorenzo moved with the terrifying grace of an absolute predator. He knew he held the power of life and death over everyone breathing his air. With dead eyes and a reputation built entirely on spilled blood, his ruthless syndicate owned the docks and underground gaming rings. He marched straight into Arthur's glass office, flanked by 2 towering bodyguards. From her cramped desk in the shadows, Penelope watched the juicy drama unfold through the dusty blinds. Arthur turned the color of ash, his expensive silk tie suddenly looking like a hangman's rope, the voice slicing right through the glass. "We have a discrepancy," he whispered. Arthur immediately started sweating bullets. "Let us remember a simple life lesson. Sheer terror will always unmask a hollow man." Arthur was practically beginning trembling as he saw every cent was accounted for and the offshore transfer went perfectly. But Lorenzo just leaned over that mahogany desk and dropped an absolute nightmare. $40 million, Arthur. 40 million vanished from the waterfront account into a Geneva ghost firm that Arthur allegedly authorized. Arthur collapsed into his leather chair, hyperventilating. He immediately threw his entire team under the bus, crying that it must be a computer glitch. Here is a simple life lesson for you. A weak leader will always blame their own people when the bed gets too hot. Lorenzo just stared at him with zero emotion. He pulled a suppressed pistol from his jacket, set it on the desk, and softly said they did not believe in glitches. Lorenzo delivers his brutal ultimatum. Arthur has exactly 24 hours to produce the missing cash, or the debt is paid in blood. The air in the office turns to lead. Every employee freezes, paralyzed by the sheer terror radiating from the room. Everyone except for Penelope. Standing quietly by the printer, she does not tremble at all. As the most dangerous man in Chicago locks his dark eyes onto hers, she lets out a faint sigh and actually rolls her eyes at him. A microscopic slip, but Lorenzo breathes fear for a living. He stops dead in his tracks, studying this invisible girl in a faded beige sweater. Here is a simple life lesson. Sometimes the most dangerous predators hide in plain sight. They wear the quietest faces, waiting for sheer arrogance to completely blind you. She wore the disguise of weak prey, but beneath her glasses, her gaze was razor-sharp. Lorenzo points a leather-gloved finger at her, his dark voice slicing through the silence to demand her name. Sweating and desperate, Arthur rushes forward. He dismisses her as a nobody, a simple clerk, frantically ordering her away. Penelope clutches her papers tightly, flawlessly playing the frightened victim. "Penelope," she whispers, her voice breaking perfectly, but Lorenzo is hooked. He steps into her personal space, towering over her. "Did you roll your eyes at me?" he asks. "Life teaches us a simple lesson. Those who shout the loudest are rarely the ones holding the real power. True control is silent, calculating, and never needs to raise voice to be felt late in a room." Penelope shrinks back, her hands shaking right on cue. She stammers out an excuse about having a bad astigmatism and twitchy eyes. Lorenzo lets the silence stretch out. He knows she is lying. Her terrified performance is flawless, but he senses the cold intellect behind her disguise. Leaning in, he drops his voice to a whisper. 24 hours. He suggests she help her boss find the money before he destroys her archives. The second he walks out, the office collapses into chaos. While Arthur screams at everyone to rip the servers open, Penelope simply walks back to her desk and quietly boots up her laptop. Here is a simple life lesson. Real power always remains perfectly calm while weakness panics. The men were running in blind circles, entirely unaware that she had already won. Here is the beautiful plot twist. Penelope did not need 24 hours to find the missing cash. She knew exactly where those $40 million were, because she was the quiet mastermind who stole it 3 weeks ago. Later that evening, heavy rain pours down as she walks home. Under a battered yellow umbrella, she takes a dark alley shortcut. Suddenly, blinding headlights pin her against the wet brick wall. A dark SUV cuts off her path, and two massive enforcers step into the downpour. She is completely boxed in. They smile, thinking they cornered a helpless mouse. But life teaches us a simple lesson sometimes. When you think you are hunting weak prey, you are stepping straight into the waiting jaws of a predator. Penelope had been waiting for this trap to spring all night. The door of the SUV swings open and Lorenzo steps into the freezing rain. Under a black umbrella, city lights bleed across the vada of asphalt, casting him in shadows. An astigmatism, he murmurs softly. Pacing up to her, he mentions he asked his doctor, and strangely enough, bad eyes do not cause you to roll them when Imogen threat reaches your boss. Penelope stands frozen, her yellow umbrella shivering in the wind. She slides back into character, begging to go home and feed her cats. Lorenzo lets out a deep, chilling laugh that cuts through the storm. He orders her to drop the pathetic act. Here is a harsh life lesson. You can only play the innocent fool for so long before the true players see exactly who you are. Her mask of weakness was slipping, revealing the cold steel underneath. Lorenzo lays out the truth. He knows Arthur lacks the guts to steal $40 million or the brains to hide it. His men spent 6 hours tracing that Geneva account, hitting a firewall so vicious it fried two servers. His news closer, his voice heavy with dark admiration. He knows she was the only one without a racing heart. She is the true phantom pulling the strings. Then the beautiful shift happens. Penelope takes a slow, deep breath. The frantic shaking stops. Her defeated posture vanishes into the rain. She straightens her spine and, suddenly, the quiet clerk commands the entire alley. Here is a simple life lesson. Real power never needs to loudly announce itself. The true Penelope has finally entered the game, and she is glorious. She looks at the most dangerous man in the city, and she smiles. Today, you and I are going to unpack a brilliant deception. Watch closely. That fragile, trembling vibe Penelope had going on, it vanishes like a cheap coat. In its place is a cold, piercing energy that literally freezes the blood of a hardened Mafia boss. Her stutter is completely gone. She looks Lorenzo right in the eye, dropping the wildest flex. She tells him his guys just walked into a trap she planted 30 days ago. By sunrise, tons of fake evidence will tie his family to a murdered center. Lorenzo is full-on panicking. His hand shakes as he grabs his weapon. But Penelope does not even blink. She stares past the steel and tells him to rethink his choices. It shows us a vital life lesson. The quietest people in the room are usually the ones holding the winning hand. Penelope brings the hammer down. She tells him straight up that if her pulse flatlines or she misses midnight check-in, a dead man switch flips. Every hidden ledger and paid-up politician will flood the morning papers. Lorenzo just stands there, genuine shock freezing his lungs. This guy spent his life breaking hardened killers. Yet here is a girl in a soaked beige holding a digital sniper rifle to his legacy. He hisses through his teeth, trying to call her bluff. She just stares back, reaching slowly into her canvas bag with agonizing calm. It is a striking reminder for all of us. The most dangerous person is rarely the one making the loudest noise, but rather the one controlling the silence. The tension in that alley is thick enough to choke on. The enforcers have their weapons raised, but Lorenzo slowly lifts a hand to stop them. Penelope, this supposedly harmless tech girl, turns her waterproof tablet right toward him. His guarded offshore account reads 0. She looks the aging boss in the eye and delivers the fatal blow. She is not the thief here. The guy bleeding his empire dry is Ricardo, the boy he raised from the gutter and trusted like a son. Ricardo has been skimming for 2 years, hoarding $40 million to fund a hostile takeover and put a hit on Lorenzo tomorrow. The color completely drains from Lorenzo's face. It teaches us a bitter truth about blind trust. The hand you feed is often the very same hand holding the dagger behind your back. This betrayal cuts Lorenzo straight to the bone. Ricardo was the kid he protected during violent nights on the streets, but that empty balance is a cold fact. The aging crime boss goes completely still, his voice dropping to a whisper as he demands his money. Penelope just shrugs, treating 40 million bucks like pocket change. When Ricardo tried to move the cash, she grabbed it mid-flight, scattering the funds through a crazy maze of digital vaults. Now she holds the only key. Lorenzo stares at her, his mind reeling as he asks the only logical question left. Why not just take the cash and vanish? We often assume money is the ultimate prize, but here is a solid life lesson. Those who survive know true security demands something far more permanent than just wealth. A hollow bitter laugh escapes Penelope. Run, exactly. She lays the brutal truth. She is old, armed with absolutely zero street survival skills. If she actually ran, Lorenzo or Ricardo would easily track her down and bury her. But then she tilts her head, locking eyes with the hardened boss. Running is boring, she whispers. She prefers having total control. Right now, she holds his 40 million, the proof of his underboss betraying him, and the digital key to his entire empire. She owns him plain and simple. The rain beats down on the pavement as Lorenzo stares at her, realizing the ruthless monster hiding inside that ordinary cardigan. It is a harsh reality we all must face. True power never has to raise its voice to prove it belongs at the head of the table. Stick with me on this one, because the psychological warfare is about to escalate. A rough bark of laughter escapes Lorenzo. He tells her to get in the car before he forgets how valuable her life just became. The scene shifts to a hidden safe house, basically a concrete fortress buried deep in the woods. Inside, the air is thick with paranoia. Dominic, his fierce second-in-command, is shouting until his lungs burn, losing his absolute mind over the betrayal. Seated on a simple bar stool is Penelope. She remains totally untouched by the aggressive energy of these trained killers, ignoring their raised weapons completely. It reminds us of a really important life lesson. Real strength is having the incredible discipline to sit calmly in the silent eye of a raging hurricane. The tension in that concrete room is absolutely suffocating. Penelope has traded her soaked cardigan for a dark shirt, her fingers just flying across two laptops. Dominic slams his heavy fist onto the granite counter, roaring that Ricardo would never turn against their syndicate. He is blindly convinced this girl is weaving lies, basically dismissing her as a glorified calculator. He demands they put a bullet in her right this second. But Lorenzo just stands quietly in the shadows, taking a slow sip of his scotch. He totally ignores his screaming lieutenant. His dark eyes are locked onto Penelope, deeply fascinated by her complete absence of fear. It teaches us a subtle life lesson about human nature. Those who rely purely on intimidation are usually the very first to lose their actual power. Penelope does not even flinch. Her eyes stay locked on the screens as she explains that if Dominic pulls that trigger, her cases will scramble. Lorenzo would lose his millions, and authorities would map his operation before sunrise. She politely suggests Dominic to calm down. The enforcer snaps, pulling his pistol and lunging toward her. Lorenzo's voice cuts through the room. He does not shout. He simply demands obedience, ordering his guy to back off. Dominic freezes, screaming that the boss is being manipulated. Penelope's fingers stop moving. She hits the enter key with a sharp crack crack. Check your phone, Dominic. It is a powerful life lesson. Physical force means absolutely nothing when your opponent holds all your darkest secrets. Dominic frowns, pulling out his encrypted device. You can see the exact second his heart drops into his stomach. Displayed right on the screen is a raw transcript of a secret call he made to his mistress, complete with GPS logs and clear audio. Penelope takes a deliberate, slow sip of her water. She looks at the towering man and reveals the devastating truth. She has root access to every single device inside that fortress. She explains, her voice terrifyingly calm, that she can wipe out his bank accounts, erase his identity, or forward his words to his wife before he even pulls the trigger. She stares down this girl killer without blinking. This moment perfectly illustrates a profound life lesson. A sharp, calculating mind backed by the right leverage will always shatter mindless muscle. As a suffocating silence crashes over the kitchen, these hardened men stare at Penelope with creeping horror. It finally dawns on them that she is not their hostage. She is the warden, and they are trapped inside her cage. Lorenzo watches her, a dangerous smile pulling at his mouth. He respects the sheer ruthlessness of it. He turns to speak, but the words never leave his throat. The heavy steel door violently explodes inward. The blast shatters the glass, sending deadly shards flying everywhere. Armed mercenaries pour through the thick smoke, their rifles tearing the room apart. Ricardo did not wait for tomorrow. Lorenzo draws his weapon, returning heavy fire. It teaches us a brutal life lesson about survival. Just when you think you have mastered the board, your opponent flips the entire table. Let us look at this piece by piece together. Absolute chaos consumes the room. Enforcers dive for cover as automatic fire chews through the drywall. The bitter smell of gunpowder chokes the air. Lorenzo roars over the deafening gunfire, screaming at Penelope to get down. He expects to see a terrified civilian curled into a weeping ball. Instead, he finds her seated flat on the tiles behind a steel refrigerator. Her fingers are flying across her laptop. Bullets are shredding the cabinets inches above her head, yet her face remains a mask of cold focus. She shouts over the noise that she needs exactly 3 minutes. Lorenzo fires back and screaming that they do not have 3 minutes left to live. It is a stark life lesson. True power is not the absence of panic, but the rare ability to focus while your world burns down. Lorenzo fires, dropping an armed gunman trying to flank them. He shouts that Dominic caught a bullet. Penelope does not miss a single keystroke, demanding he buy her 2 more minutes. The Don reloads, physically shifting his body to shield her from the flying lead. He fires blindly over the marble counter, demanding her plan. She speaks rapidly. The fortress runs on a centralized smart grid. Ricardo hijacked the system to kill the alarms, and she is fighting to rip control back. Suddenly, a massive mercenary vaults the island, raising a shotgun squarely at Lorenzo's face. In that exact fraction of a second, the entire house drops into absolute pitch blackness. It shows us a profound life lesson about conflict. Sometimes, you must deliberately plunge your world into the dark before you can finally seize control. Bro, the second the lights cut out, this elite hit squad is absolutely cooked. They rushed in thinking they owned the place, forgetting you do not make the rules in another man's house. From the floor, Penelope screams the command. Boom, an ear-shattering alarm blasts through the speakers. These mercenaries literally drop their weapons, clutching their skulls. Then the fire system kicks in, but it is not spraying water, man. It is dumping thick halon gas, literally suffocating them. Meanwhile, Lorenzo and Penelope are chilling in the kitchen's sealed air pocket, just listening to these dudes choke out. Lorenzo casually drops his night vision goggles like an absolute boss. Here is a simple for you. True power is never the loudest gun in the room. It is knowing exactly how to cause the air your enemies breathe. Let us break some madness down, guys. Lorenzo is moving through this pitch black room like an absolute demon, completely dismantling the squad sent by the exact same boss who raised him. Absolute cinema. When the gunfire stops, he smacks the red backup lights, and the room looks like a total graveyard of backstabbers. Blood is literally pouring down his face, but he does not even care. That physical pain is nothing compared to getting betrayed by your own father figure. He walks into the kitchen as Miss Hernandez Penelope on the cold tiles. She is shaking like crazy from the adrenaline rush, but her eyes pure, unhinged fire. Sure, she is so ready for war. Sometimes in life, the fire inside you simply has to burn a whole lot brighter than the heartbreak that is trying to drag you down. The tension in that wrecked kitchen is literally off the charts. Lorenzo reaches down with his scarred up hand, and Penelope hesitates for a split second before grabbing it. He pulls her up but does not let go.
All that arrogant Mafia boss energy. Oh.
He drops his voice to this raw whisper and tells her she just saved his life. Penelope immediately panics and throws up her nerd defenses, stammering that she only saved him because she needs his protection to survive. Such a classic denial move, right? But Lorenzo is not buying it. He steps right into his space and totally ignoring the carnage outside and gently wipes the ash out of her hair. We all build these massive walls of cold logic to protect our feelings, but the right person will always straight through the bricks. Picture this, chat.
Every other mobster looked at Penelope and just saw some quiet background character. But Lorenzo, he sees the total mastermind. He leans in close, running his thumb over her jawline,
and straight up whispers that he sees the absolute monster hiding under her skin. And to a savage like him, that is the most gorgeous thing ever. Penelope just freezes.
For the first time in her entire life, her cover is blown. She's no longer just some invisible shadow trying to survive. This dude sees her insanely ruthless, big brain energy, and absolutely loves it.
Hold on to this fact: the right person is never going to try to fix your dark edges. Instead, they are going to pull up a chair, sit right next to your shadows, and admire the crazy storm you hide from the world. The North Shore safe house is looking totally wrecked by morning. The cleanup crew is moving in to scrub away the night's absolute chaos, but you can still feel the heavy sting of that massive betrayal. Lorenzo is pacing the floor like a complete maniac, head wrapped in bandages, screaming Italian into a burner phone. The boss who taught him everything just signed his own death warrant. Meanwhile, Penelope is chilling in this massive leather chair. She is running on zero sleep, but her brain is working in overdrive, calculating every single angle. Loyalty in the Mafia might be cheap, but a truly sharp mind is absolute gold. While Lorenzo is raging, she is already 10 steps ahead, quietly plotting the complete and utter destruction of Ricardo's entire empire. For 7 straight hours risking, Penelope has been an absolute digital ninja. She is bouncing the meter sound across hidden servers, so nobody can track a single dime. Suddenly, Lorenzo slams his phone down, looking incredibly stressed. He yells that Ricardo just bought out at the police commissioner and is raiding all their street operations. Penelope does not even flinch, bro. She takes a slow sip of her black coffee and hits him with a brutal reality check. Lorenzo is trying to fight a loud street war, while Ricardo is playing high-level corporate monopoly with their own dirty money. Here is a hard truth about brute force is always going to lose to a quiet, calculated strategy. She is not going to shoot Ricardo. She is going to cut off his cash flow and bleed him totally dry. Penelope looks him dead in the eye and softly drops a nuke. The job is already done. At 4 in the morning, she quietly locked every single one of Ricardo's offshore shell accounts. But a genius like her knows that is just a temporary fix. To completely bury Ricardo before tonight's massive charity gala, they have to bankrupt the invisible rich guys backing him up. Lorenzo leans over her, demanding the puppet master's name. She gives this chilling little smirk and says it is State Senator Harrison Caldwell. The guy has been stealing pension funds to keep Ricardo afloat. Let this be a huge lesson for anyone playing dirty games. Arrogance and greed will always leave a paper trail. When she leaks these files, that corrupt senator is going straight to federal prison. If Caldwell goes down, Ricardo's whole operation crumbles into dust. But Lorenzo is seriously doubting it. He warns her that the senator is a paranoid freak who keeps his dirty secrets on an offline server at a heavily guarded mansion. Penelope just lets out this soft, annoyed sigh. Stick with me here, because her trap is insanely genius. She reminds Lorenzo that nobody is perfectly clean. It turns out the senator has this massive weakness for expensive antique art, and he recently bought a super rare vase through a sketchy shadow trust. Remember this harsh reality: our deepest indulgences are often the exact keys to our own destruction. With the most wicked smile, she reveals she planted a sleeper virus inside that auction house's system over a whole year ago. The way she pulled this off is pure art, guys. The exact second that Senator's secretary clicked on the digital receipt, Penelope's malware completely shredded their impossible security. She casually drops the fact that she has been lurking inside Caldwell's private servers for 14 whole days. Lorenzo just stares at her, looking absolutely terrified and completely amazed at the same time. This dude thought he hired a nerdy accountant, but he actually invited a digital Grim Reaper into his house. She had this checkmate ready before the betrayal even happened. Penelope just shrugs and admits she loves holding onto people's dirty secrets. Here is a fundamental rule of survival: never throw away the receipts on your enemies. For the first time all week, Lorenzo just laughs out loud. Lorenzo is totally obsessed with how ruthless she is right now. His voice booms across the room, telling her to pull the trigger and watch Ricardo panic. But bro, Penelope is already light years ahead of him. She smirks and whispers that the stolen files are already bouncing through ghost servers, dropping onto every major news desk in the entire city.
Exactly 10 minutes. Let this sink in. Never just threaten to take down your demons. Take the shot while they are still breathing.
Lorenzo realized tonight's fancy charity gala is about to turn into a massive psychological war zone. Closing her lap, she promises him there will be no messy shootout, just a perfect checkmate. But first, she says she is going to need some proper armor. Penelope looks right at him, totally serious. If she is stepping out of the shadows to ruin a Mafia empire, she cannot wear baggy sweaters anymore. She needs real, razor-sharp armor. Lorenzo looks into her eyes and sees the Dark Queen stepping up to the chessboard. He immediately calls his totally battered right-hand man, who is now looking at Penelope like she is a ghost, and orders a high-end private collection brought upstairs. The scene then cuts straight to the grand ballroom, massive crystal chandeliers, and tons of fake wealthy smiles. As the biggest charity event of the year is officially kicking off. Never forget this hard truth about the world we live in. The most vicious predators do not hide in dark alleys. They wear expensive tailored suits and smile right at you. Picture Ricardo Costa by a massive champagne fountain, breathing in the ballroom air like he owns the entire underworld. His custom tuxedo barely hides the venom pumping through his veins. Beside him is Arthur, Penelope's cowardly former boss, basically sweating through his stiff collar. Ricardo shoves a glass into the trembling man's hand, his voice dripping with toxic confidence. He brags that Lorenzo is currently rotting in the ashes of the North Shores estate, and by tomorrow this hostile takeover is absolute. But Arthur is vibrating with pure fear, nervously whispering about the deadly danger of loose ends. Listen, here is a life lesson for you. Arrogance is a blinding poison, and popping the champagne before the finish line is always a fatal miscalculation. Arthur is stammering over his own tongue, struggling to warn them that Penelope is completely gone and carrying their darkest secrets. Ricardo just laughs, brushing her off as an absolute nobody, shaking in some dark corner. But you and I are about to watch this whole empire crumble. Suddenly, the room goes freezing cold, and the string quartet drags to a scraping halt. Hundreds of faces turn toward the grand staircase as the heavy doors swing open. Lorenzo stands there in a midnight blue tuxedo, carrying the terrifying gravity of a ghost, returning for his stolen throne. He locks eyes with the surrogate father who tried to bury him. Here is a simple truth to live by. Never turn your back on the quiet ones you push into the dark, because fate always collects its debts. Lorenzo stands there like an absolute king claiming his bloody throne, but look closer. He is not the one drawing gasps from the room. It is the woman holding his arm. Penelope has burned her camouflage to ash. She wears a custom emerald green velvet gown, basically a physical weapon, tracing every curve she spent years hiding. It is a silent declaration of total war. Her anxious bun is gone, her dark hair spilling down her shoulders in heavy waves. The thick glasses are missing, revealing a sharp gaze that mirrors her devastating mind. The lesson here is very real. Your most powerful you stop shrinking down to keep other people comfortable. She does not just look gorgeous tonight. She looks like absolute, inevitable ruin. She is an absolute menace right now. Arthur stares up at her, and his crystal glass slips through his shaking fingers, shattering on the marble floor with a deafening crack. His face drains of color. Beside him, Ricardo loses his arrogant smirk, his eyes darting frantically toward the exit doors like a trapped rat. Lorenzo and Penelope glide down the staircase with flawless grace, literally parting the sea of terrified guests. Lorenzo leans close, his voice dropping into a low rumble. He calls her his queen and asks for her opening move. Penelope flashes a smile, colder than a winter freeze. "I, Selene the king," she whispers, "remember this life lesson. When you learn to plot your next move in total silence, your final victory will make all the noise you ever need." The tension in the room is thick enough to swallow. The power couple stops right in front of Ricardo. Two of his guards step forward to look tough, but Lorenzo just flicks his wrist. Instantly, Dominic and three massive enforcers bleed out of the shadows, hands resting on their weapons. A deadly threat hangs heavy over the ballroom. Make one wrong move, and you are done. Ricardo swallows hard. He is full-on sweating now, forcing out a pathetic, shaking laugh to save face. He jokes that he heard Lorenzo suffered a fatal accident. Lorenzo stares completely through the guy, softly replying that rumors of his death were wildly exaggerated. The life lesson here is crystal clear. A true king never raises his voice, because real authority is a steady force backed by brutal preparation. Lorenzo ignores Arthur, who is shaking in his boots. Penelope locks eyes with her toxic former boss. With a voice like cracking ice, she resigns, telling him she will not be coming in on Monday. Arthur panics, hissing that she does not belong among these elites. Penelope does not blink, calmly stating she belongs exactly where she chooses to stand. Now, you and I are going to love this next move. She pivots to Ricardo, dropping a massive bomb. She reveals his main financial backer was raided by the FBI exactly 30 minutes ago. Ricardo plays dumb, but Penelope smiles with the chilling grace of a predator. Remember this life lesson when the world tests you. Never let someone dictate your true worth. You alone set your boundaries, and you always claim your own space.
Penelope completely dismantles me in the ballroom. She pointing out that was our passion. His backer's cash. He cannot pay his muscle.
Without those soldiers, he loses control of the city ports. Without the $40 million he tried to steal, he is just a broke man in a borrowed suit. Ricardo drops his charming mask. He steps into her space, furious that she blocked his money. He threatens to burn the motel down, bragging about his 50 armed men waiting out back. Penelope is absolute ice. She pulls a phone from her clutch and politely corrects his math. He actually has 50 mercenaries expecting a payout at exactly 9 p.m. Here is a hard life lesson. Loyalty bought with cold cash evaporates the second that money dries up. She casually glances at her watch, announcing to the room that it is exactly 8:59 p.m. The tension feels like a ticking timer bomb. The wealthy guests back away,
leaving a wide ring around the confrontation. Ricardo is sweating straight through his collar. He hisses that she is bluffing, bragging that his offshore accounts are hidden behind heavy encryption.
Penelope gently tilts her head with terrifying calm. They were secure, she whispers, right up until she personally hacked the system and burned his protocols to the ground. She falls silent, watching her glowing screen as the final seconds bleed away. Take notes on this life lesson. Never underestimate the destructive power of a pure intelligence. A sharp mind will always tear down an empire without throwing a single punch. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ricardo's phone vibrates violently in his pocket, buzzing like a trapped hornet. His hands physically shake as he pulls it out. The screen is blowing up with panicked messages from his crew. Every transaction bounced. All accounts are frozen solid. Outside, his hired muscle realizes they are not getting paid to fight a mafia boss, so they melt away into the dark. Ricardo looks up, his eyes completely desperate. 2 years of plotting a bloody takeover, erased in 60 seconds by an accountant in a velvet dress. He screams that she ruined his life. Lorenzo steps in front of her, softly replying that Ricardo ruined himself. The life lesson here is simple. Greed builds a fragile house of cards, and reality is the cold wind that knocks it flat. Lorenzo drops his voice to a deadly whisper, reminding Ricardo that breaking the oath makes him a dead man. Pushed into pure desperation, Ricardo snaps, knowing he cannot beat Lorenzo. He draws a combat knife and lunges at Penelope. Stick with me here, because this is the moment her transformation becomes physical. That terrified girl is gone. She does not scream or freeze. She smoothly pivots on her heels, slipping out of the blade's path like a ghost. Lorenzo moves with impossible speed, catching Ricardo's arm mid-strike and twisting it with savage force. A sickening bone snap echoes across the room. The life lesson here is obvious. When you blindly try to drag others down with your sinking ship, you only guarantee your own brutal downfall. Ricardo screams in raw agony as the knife clatters onto the floor. Before his knees can even hit the marble, Lorenzo's hand clamps around his throat, lifting the traitor off his feet. Lorenzo looks like an absolute demon, his eyes swirling with unhinged murder. He snarls into Ricardo's face, promising that he never gets to touch her, let alone breathe the same air. It is a terrifying display of primal devotion. Lorenzo tosses him aside like a bag of trash. Dominic and the enforcers drag the sobbing man away into the dark to handle official family business. Watching this brutal scene, Arthur breaks down. He collapses to his knees, weeping for mercy. Here is the heavy life lesson for today. Your actions have severe consequences, and apologizing only after the steel trap snaps shut will never save you. Arthur is weeping uncontrollably, desperately, trying to throw Penelope under the bus. She stares down at this pathetic manager who spent 3 years abusing her. She feels zero pity, just an ice-cold detachment. She brands him an accessory to massive fraud and treason against the family. Then she twists the knife calmly, him calling utterly incompetent. She promises him that Lorenzo will not take his life tonight. Arthur pauses, a pathetic spark of hope shining on his tear-stained face. Penelope instantly shatters that hope. She leans in and whispers that she just forwarded a detailed file of his personal embezzlement straight to the IRS. Here is a beautiful life lesson to wrap this up. Treating people badly will always come back to bury you, especially when those exact people hold the keys to your darkest secrets. Listen, you and I need to take a second to appreciate this absolute masterpiece together. Penelope looks dead at Arthur and promises him he is not dying tonight. Oh no, it is way worse. He is going to rot in a federal cell until the end of time. Arthur completely folds, sobbing on the floor like a baby, while hotel security rushes in, totally clueless about the absolute bloodbath that just went down. Then we get to Lorenzo. His chest is heaving under that crazy expensive suit, fully jacked on adrenaline. He steps right up to Penelope, ignoring the panicked crowd, and just exhales. He is utterly mesmerized by this woman who just nuked a criminal empire using only her brain. Here is the life lesson, guys. The absolute deadliest weapon you can ever bring to a fight is a sharp, deeply focused mind. Let us break this crazy sequence down. Lorenzo stares right into Penelope's eyes, his voice dropping low as he literally calls her magnificent. For a split second, that icy boss energy she has been cracks, showing the wild thrill pulses right under her velvet dress. She looks up and straight up admits she prefers being the one in control. And how does the most terrifying mob boss in Chicago react? He grabs her face, completely tuning out the panicked whispers of the high society snobs. He leans in and dares her to control him, confessing he is entirely at her mercy. It is wild. The life lesson here is simple. True power is not about dominating every room, but knowing exactly when to surrender your strength to the right person. When they finally kiss, it is an absolute explosion of pure, raw dominance. That kiss is just raw, fueled by pure adrenaline and some serious new boss energy. Penelope kisses him back with this savage grace, completely proving that the shy little wallflower she used to be is dead and gone. Now, she is the undisputed queen of the Chicago underworld, holding the most dangerous guy in the city right in the palm of her hand. Fast forward to the next morning and everything is flipped. Ricardo Costa is totally wiped from the map, buried under a concrete project before the sun even comes up.
Meanwhile, Arthur is crying to a jail cell, dead, broke, and
staring down a 50-year sentence, while the paper trail perfectly dodges Lorenzo's crew. Here is your life lesson. The loudest guy in the room is always the easiest target, while the quiet ones silently rewrite the rules in the dark. Penelope is absolutely never going back to that suffocating basement ever again. She traded all that old dust for a massive glass penthouse at the very top of the newly bought Bianca Tower. Just picture this insane modern fortress, completely lined with heavy steel and buzzing with massive server racks. Lorenzo is standing in the doorway, swirling a glass of top-shelf bourbon, completely obsessed with her. It has been 3 weeks since the absolute madness of that gala. The physical bruises are gone, but the power dynamic of the criminal underworld has permanently flipped. She is standing barefoot on some priceless rug, wearing his massive shirt, hyper-focused on a digital map of the Midwest. The life lesson here is huge. When you finally decide to level up your internal mindset, your physical reality will naturally catch up. Her hair is thrown up in this super messy bun with a literal pencil stuck behind her ear. To anyone else, she just looks like an exhausted tech worker pulling a late shift. But Lorenzo knows the truth. He is looking at an absolute genius general plotting a total takeover. Without even taking her eyes off the glowing screens, she totally calls him out for staring at her. Lorenzo just smirks, his voice super low as he admits he is just enjoying the view. He casually walks over, drops his bourbon on the desk, and wraps his arms tight around her waist. He pulls her in, breathing in that mix of warm vanilla and triple-shot espresso, softly reminding her she has been grinding for 12 straight hours. Take note of this life lesson. Ambition is a crazy, powerful engine, but you always have to pause and appreciate the real ones standing in your corner. Lorenzo whispers that the rival Irish mob can chill until tomorrow. Penelope lets out a massive sigh, finally melting back into his chest. Their romance is a completely locked down secret, safely hidden inside this bulletproof penthouse. Out on the streets, she is feared as his ruthless partner, but up here, she is the one emotional soft spot this brutal boss has ever allowed himself. Suddenly, Penelope taps a key, and the giant map zooms right into the South Side docks. She warns him that Declan Fitzpatrick is not waiting around. The Irish boss thinks the territory is weak, trying to sneak his cargo through without paying the boss tax. Here is a crucial life lesson for you. Never mistake someone's quiet stillness for weakness. They are usually just studying your every single move from the safety of the shadows.
You and I both know exactly what is happening here. Declan believes went soft just because must be used to be a regular accountant. Mistake built on pure, stupid arrogance.
Hearing this, Lorenzo instantly snaps. His violent energy spikes, ready for war. Declan is a classic thug who uses a baseball bat for every problem, and Lorenzo wants to send his hitmen to the docks to literally burn it all down. He wants to remind everyone who owns Chicago, but Penelope shuts that alpha rage down in 1 second. She turns, places a cool hand right on his clenched jaw, and reminds him the old Lorenzo is officially dead. Going in guns blazing is messy, loud, and incredibly expensive. The life lesson is crystal clear. Brute force is usually the worst move. Quiet intelligence will always beat swinging wildly in the dark. She whispers that they do not use bullets anymore. They use their brains. Lorenzo literally gets shivers staring at the terrifying genius of the woman he loves. He asks for the master plan, and she swipes up an insane web of hidden financial data. She breaks it all down perfectly. Declan hates modern banking, so he washes his dirty money through luxury hotels in Dublin and a shady offshore hedge fund. Lorenzo warns her that not even the FBI can touch a setup like that. But Penelope just flashes the absolute coldest smirk, her face glowing in the blue light of the monitors. She calmly whispers that Declan might be a ghost to the government, but he is totally to her. Take this vital life lesson to heart. True knowledge is the ultimate weapon. When you truly understand how the system works, you hold all the real power in the room. Stick with me because you and I are about to watch some insane psychological chess. Penelope just spent 3 days hunting down the hidden routing numbers Declan used to pay off foreign judges. Now, this brute demands a sit-down at the Drake Hotel, threatening a massive street war for more territory. Penelope instantly says she is going, which makes Lorenzo freeze up in total panic. He flat out refuses, calling Declan a wild dog who will only try to bully her. But Penelope kills that overprotective vibe with one single, deadly glare. She tells Lorenzo he is simply going to stand behind her and let her do the talking. Here is an essential life lesson for you. Real power never actually has to yell to get respect. She coldly declares it is time the city finally learns exactly who holds the leash. The tension inside this private room at the Drake Hotel is literally suffocating. Picture Declan, an absolute tank of hammer man in a custom tweed suit, backed up by 4 deadly goons. Across from him sits Penelope, looking flawless in a killer blood-red blazer. Lorenzo is looming silently behind her chair like a shadow of pure violence. Declan acts super arrogant, lighting a massive cigar, blowing smoke over the table and mocking them. He laughs at Lorenzo, saying that handing the Mafia over to a quiet bean counter is a pathetic joke. He even calls Penelope sweetheart, barking that the docs are not some cute spreadsheet. Please remember this life lesson. Never underestimate someone just because they look neat and exceptionally polite. In the real world, that arrogant assumption will absolutely destroy you. Declan keeps running his mouth, bragging that you cannot crunch numbers when his thugs are breaking kneecaps. Penelope literally does not even blink. She calmly opens a sleek black leather folder. Her voice is so icy it drops the room temperature instantly, informing Mr. Fitzpatrick that he owes their crew $4.2 million in unpaid taxes. Declan laughs right in her face, asking if this accountant is seriously trying to audit a mob boss. He starts screaming threats, flexing his 300 armed soldiers and swearing he will turn Chicago into a war zone. Penelope stays completely still, radiating this terrifying quiet confidence. Here is a vital life lesson. The person who loses their temper in a negotiation always loses the war. Totally unbothered, she quietly reminds him that 300 armed men require a very steady paycheck. She looks him dead in the eyes and whispers that payroll takes hard liquid cash, a resource he no longer has. Declan stops laughing immediately. The arrogance completely drains from his face, and he demands to know what she means. Penelope does not raise her voice. She just slides a single piece of paper across the table. She casually mentions that at 8 in the morning, an anonymous packet landed right on the desk of corporate enforcement in Dublin. It had unredacted ledgers proving he was washing cartel drug money through fancy hotels. Declan turns purple with rage and lunges forward. Instantly, Lorenzo drops his hand to his weapon, completely freezing the brute in his tracks. Take this serious life lesson today. Your dirty secrets will always leave a hidden paper trail somewhere in the world. Declan glares, spitting out that she is completely bluffing. Declan is out here screaming. His servers are totally bulletproof. But Penelope is about to brutally shatter that delusion. She absolutely roasts him for hiring bargain bin security scrubs who used the most laughable encryption ever. She literally hacked his entire mainframe while waiting for her morning espresso to brew. You and I have probably both seen people make this exact mistake, so let this be a solid life lesson. Never cut corners on your foundation, because cheaping out will eventually cost you everything. She drops the hammer, telling him the feds are seizing his luxury hotels right now. His offshore money is frozen solid. Sickening horror washes over Declan as she casually reveals he is totally bankrupt and his 300 armed goons will need a new boss by tomorrow. Penelope goes in for the kill shot. With a razor-thin smirk, she casually mentions the Bianca family is currently hiring. Declan snaps his neck looking at Lorenzo, begging for that old-school gangster mercy. Lorenzo just stands there like a statue of pure icy satisfaction. Penelope slams her folder shut, giving Declan exactly 24 hours to vanish from Chicago. If he sticks around past noon, Lorenzo will not even need a weapon. She will just text the coordinates of his wife's hidden villa to the raging cartel he just screwed over. Always remember this crucial truth. When you are totally outmatched, swallow your pride and walk away before you lose what matters most. Declan slowly stands up, shaking with a wild mix of helpless rage and absolute, bone-chilling terror. Declan stares at the woman he thought he could easily push around, but now he sees it's the absolute devil staring right back into his soul. He folds and leaves in dead silence, his enforcers scrambling like lost puppies. Those heavy doors click shut. Lorenzo buries his face in Penelope's neck, his shoulders shaking with euphoric laughter. He murmurs a promise to never ever negotiate against her. She just smirks and tells him to always read the fine print. That right there is the ultimate life lesson for anyone building an empire. Always read the fine print, both in your deals and in the people you trust. Over the next 6 months, her brilliant system runs flawlessly, trading all that messy street violence for a clean, absolutely untouchable digital monopoly.
Let us step into the shadows tonight, you and I. Picture a city where syndicate profits explode by 400%, yet the streets remain eerily quiet. Not a single drop of blood is spilled. The Chicago cops are paralyzed while the Bianca family quietly swallows half the financial district. But here is timeless truth you should always carry with you. Massive success will always paint a permanent target on your back. The most lethal predator in this world do not wear ski masks. They flash federal badges. Special Agent Jonathan Miller has been hunting Lorenzo for 10 sacrificing his marriage and sanity to build a case. Yet every single time Miller gets close, the evidence vanishes like smoke, and his witnesses magically forget their own names. It is a rainy Tuesday, wrapping the city in a moody vibe. Penelope is chilling on the penthouse sofa, bathed in the pale glow of her laptop while Lorenzo sips heavy red wine nearby. Without warning, the rapid rhythm of her typing comes to a dead, chilling stop. She watches a weird string of foreign code bleed across her monitor. Here is something you must always remember. Pay close attention to the quiet warning signs before the real hurricane hits. She calls out to Lorenzo. Her voice is barely a whisper, but its sheer gravity makes him snap straight to attention. His relaxed posture completely vanishes, instantly replaced by the coiled tension of a cornered wolf. She looks up, dead serious, and drops the ultimate bomb. Someone is actively inside their private, encrypted network. Her eyes dart across the screen, confirming the absolute worst-case scenario. This is not a random outside hack. It is a straight-up inside job, bleeding their darkest secrets to a federal server in Quantico. Lorenzo shoots up, a dark fury rising in his chest as he demands a name. Penelope rips through thousands of lines of code in seconds, locking onto the physical device, stealing their lives. When she reads the name, a suffocating wave of betrayal washes over the room. Peter, Kensington. The air goes ice cold. Peter is their top lawyer, a guy who stood by Lorenzo for 15 years. This brings us to a harsh reality. We all trivially flit-faced. Okay. The most agonizing betrayals never come from faceless strangers in the dark. They always come from the exact people you trust the absolute most.
Peter was supposed to be family. Lorenzo asks if she is absolute sure, his voice dropping into that terrifying, dead calm tone that always hits right before extreme violence. Penelope softly explains, Peter uses a high-tech transmitter disguised as an expensive fountain pen. Every time he visits the penthouse, that pen silently drinks up their files and hands them to the feds.
Lorenzo walks over to the window,
staring down at the rainy streets. He looks like a man completely shattered from the inside. He whispers about how he constantly protected Peter, even paying for his kid to attend college. Listen to me closely here. You can pour an endless sea of money and huge favors over someone, but you can measure by true loyalty. Penelope just walks over and holds him tight. Holding him in the dim light, Penelope reminds him that raw fear makes men do terribly stupid things. She figures the feds dragged some dirty secret out of Peter and squeezed his neck until he broke. Lorenzo does not even blink. He states with freezing clarity that he will kill the lawyer tonight at the docks. It is not an empty threat. It is a stone-cold fact, but Penelope holds him tighter and refuses to let him leave. Lorenzo spins around, his anger boiling over, shouting that Peter is literally handing their entire empire over to the government. Here is an essential truth to always remember. Reacting purely out of blind rage will only destroy your own position of power. Penelope stares right back into his furious eyes and firmly tells him she has a much more devious plan. She tells him a quick bullet is way too kind for a backstabber, and a bleeding body only gives the feds a shiny photograph. Stay with me here, because you and I are about to watch a masterpiece of vengeance unfold.
She promises
they will get a performance that will tear their task force apart. Lorenzo feels his blinding anger morph into a dark, calculated curiosity. Penelope knows the lead agent is desperately starving for a massive drug bust just to justify his budget. There is a powerful life lesson here. The ultimate revenge is taking your enemy's own trap and slamming it shut on their neck. Peter thinks he is stealing real files, but he is actually sipping from a poisoned well. She is going to plant a beautiful, fatal trap tomorrow morning. Let us just look at this plan piece by piece. Penelope outlines her trap with the cold precision of a diamond cutter. She is fabricating a ghost file detailing a $50 million shipment of Colombian snow arriving at Navy Pier at midnight. She flashes a beautiful, bone-chilling smile in the shadows. We are talking perfectly faked guard rotations, phantom license plates, and a flawless forgery of Lorenzo's signature. Lorenzo slowly realizes the pure beauty of it. There is zero product coming. Penelope knows the ambitious federal agent will swallow this juicy bait hole. He will drag out tactical teams, weighing millions just to raid the freezing wind. Never blindly trust a setup that looks perfectly handed to you, because someone is always pulling the invisible strings behind the scenes. While the feds are freezing in the bitter rain chasing phantoms, Lorenzo finally sees the whole picture. A wicked smirk spreads across his face as he realizes Penelope gets unmonitored access to the government network. She tells him the fee and the fake intel is just an appetizer. When Peter uploads her file with that bugged pen, it releases a sleeper straight into the heart of Quantico. The exact second agents click open the vial, the trap brutally snaps shut. Is going to incinerate every photograph, fingerprint, and shred of hard evidence the law holds on the Bianca family. By Saturday morning, his massive empire legally will not even exist. Brain power will always be the ultimate weapon. You never need domestic mass violence when you can just erase your history with a few smart keystrokes. Lorenzo crosses the room and takes her face in his hands, holding her like she is the only real thing left in his chaotic world. He looks deep into her eyes, asking if she knows how completely he worships her brilliant mind. Even the most hardened boss can fall hopelessly to his knees for the right partner. Penelope smirks, kisses him softly, and whispers to save the worship for later.
Fast forward to the freezing winds fall off Lake Michigan, making Navy Pier look like a desolate graveyard of rusted metal.
Out in the shadows, the desperate federal agent sits in his unmarked vehicle, his heart pounding with raw anticipation. Sometimes we become so blinded by ambition that we sprint headfirst for the fire, ignoring every screaming red flag along the way. Look at this, guys. We have this federal agent freezing in the dark, totally hyped, thinking a cowardly lawyer just handed him the ultimate holy grail. He is staring at his thermal screens, whispering into his radio like a movie star, telling his tactical squad to wait in the shadows. But cut to Lorenzo's insane penthouse, and Peter the lawyer is having an absolute meltdown. The boss called him in for a late-night drink, and this dude is sweating buckets through his designer suit, terrified his bugged pen will make a sound. It is a total panic attack. Here is the lesson for today. When you sell out your own family, that massive paranoia is going to eat you alive from the inside out way before the actual boss even touches you. The tension in this room is literally suffocating.
Lorenzo is chilling at his oak table, slicing a rare steak like he has zero cares in the world.
Next to him,
Penelope looks completely bored, scrolling on her glowing tablet. Lorenzo looks like an absolute ghost and offers him a stiff drink. Peter stutters like crazy, blaming a bad stomach.
Then boom, Penelope for the jugular. Without even looking away from her screen, she choose screen to drawn for two different factions must be super exhausting. The air drops out of the room, and Peter freezes solid. It just proves a simple life lesson.
If you try to play both sides in a hardcore survival game, you are only going to guarantee your own total destruction.
Peter is straight up fighting for his life, his voice totally shaking as he has zero clue what she means. But Mila is an absolute savage, just playing with her food. She puts down her tablet and calmly drops the bomb that she has been feeding him fake files for 3 straight months. She smiles, mocking his little spy pen, saying his federal buddy is losing his pension tonight. The lawyer completely shatters. He bolts for the elevator in panic mode, but barely makes it 3 steps before Dominic the Muscle Depths step out the shadows, aiming a massive hand cannon right at his chest. Lorenzo tells the dude to sit down, as Peter breaks down crying.
Remember, never try to outsmart the mastermind
who actually built the trap you are walking into. Feel the insane reality of this penthouse with me. Peter literally drops to his knees, crying his eyes out on the expensive marble floor. He begs for his life, screaming the feds threaten to throw him in a concrete cell, swearing he only handed over useless garbage. But Penelope stands over him, cold as absolute ice. She totally shuts him down, explaining he only leaked exactly what she allowed. She taps her screen, and a hacked security feed from the pier lights up the room. Peter is choking on his tears, begging to know what is going on. She just gives him an evil smile and calls it his grand finale as tactical trucks swarm the pier. The life lesson here is brutal. People who sell out their team just because they get scared are always the easiest pawns to manipulate. The monitor glows with police sirens tearing up the dark. The
squad, the shipping container was packed with
illegal goods. Penelope casually explains the agent was expecting $50 million in contraband. But guess what? He finds 5,000 crates of premium cooking oil instead. The ultimate plot twist is
this shipment is totally legal, going to a charity. We watch the agent on screen as his career goes up in flames. Meanwhile, Penelope is still typing.
By sending his tech guys to raid this empty decoy, the agent left his own digital network completely wide open. We can all take a massive life lesson from this epic fail. If you focus all your energy on a loud distraction, you leave your true weaknesses totally unprotected. Boom, a green checkmark pops up on her tablet, confirming the silent digital wipe is totally complete. Penelope lets out a huge breath, relief washing over her. In literal seconds, the entire criminal history of the mob is gone. Wiretaps, hidden photos, and snitch logs are just turned into digital dust. Lorenzo stares at her like she is an absolute goddess. Then he looks down at the crying lawyer with a terrifying glare. He tells Peter that back in the day, Rat would be dragged to its basement and completely destroyed. But the game has changed.
True survival is about adapting to the new meta. Beating someone up just gets you caught on camera, but deleting your sins quietly makes you a total ghost. The life lesson?
Always evolve your strategy if you want to stay on top of the food chain. Lorenzo gives a dark smirk, whispering his queen has mastered the art of corporate destruction. Peter is on the floor, crying, begging on his kids' lives for mercy. Penelope stands next to the boss. Looking down at this broken dude, she tells him his family is the only reason he is still breathing. Instead of using a bullet, she wired $10 million of dirty offshore money straight into his personal bank account. Peter looks up in absolute horror as she casually mentions framing him for stealing from the Mafia. We must understand this brutal life lesson. The ultimate way to destroy an enemy is not by taking them out physically, but by completely ruining the name until they have absolutely nowhere left to hide. Stick with me, guys, because this is where it gets crazy. Penelope coldly breaks down how ruined this guy is. By Monday, every bank account he owns will be frozen. He will get locked in a federal cage for tax evasion, and that angry Asian is going to throw him under the bus for revenge. The lawyer totally collapses into a hollow shell. In this dead silence, it finally hits him.
The real apex predator in this city is not the masked dude with the gun, but the quiet girl tapping her screen. Lorenzo waves his hand, telling his guards to drag the garbage out.
Even joking about, the split being in. As the doors slam shut, carry this massive life lesson with you. The loudest dude screaming in the room is almost never the one holding the actual power to ruin your entire life. The vibe in the penthouse completely shifts, settling into the chill energy eve of flawless victory. Lorenzo walks to the massive glass windows, staring down at the glowing neon city. Every shady deal down there is now officially theirs. Penelope drifts over, softly pressing her head against his shoulder. She puts a hand over his heart to feel his pulse. Lorenzo whispers to her, admitting the rich snobs at their elite clubs are still talking major trash about her. It is wild how human nature works. People are so quick to judge a book by its cover. They will mock a silent shadow, completely clueless that the person they are laughing at is holding the sharpest scissors right over their puppet strings. The life lesson here is absolute. Never, ever underestimate the quiet ones in the room. You and I know exactly how much it stings to be totally underestimated. Lorenzo notes the high society crowd still sees her as a timid girl who got lucky. Penelope looks up, her eyes blazing with fire. She tells him to let those haters keep whispering. Let them think she is weak, and let them dig their own graves by sleeping on her massive intellect. Lorenzo leans down, pulling her into a deep kiss that officially there's dark rule over the city. He whispers that from this night on, her name will be spoken like a terrifying prayer. The glow-up is totally complete. The invisible wallflower is gone, and a ruthless mafia queen has taken over. Take this life lesson to the bank. Never make the fatal mistake of confusing someone's quiet patience for a lack of real power. High society missed the memo because snobs never looks past the surface. They totally overlooked the apex predator hiding behind a polite stutter. Lorenzo was the literal only guy who saw her true genius. He handed her the keys to a massive criminal empire, and she conquered it using nothing but her brain. The old days of messy street wars are officially cancelled. Now, this power couple rules the city through pure digital dominance. The sad era of the bullied outcast has been totally deleted, clearing the throne for the new boss. We all just watched absolute cinema-level story play out. Keep this meaningful life lesson locked in your head tonight. Never look down on someone just because they are quiet. They might literally hold the deed to your entire life.
Real boss energy does not come from screaming the loudest. It comes from insane patience. It is all about holding the best cards and waiting for the perfect second to drop the hammer. Tell me,
did her massive glow-up leave you as totally speechless as I am? Watching this forgotten wallflower turn into an untouchable mafia boss. Smash that like button right now. If you have a friend who lives for a plot twist where the queen takes over, send this video straight to them. Take this core life lesson with you. Quiet. Steady rest strategy will always completely obliterate blind, impulsive rage. Hit subscribe and ring that bell for more tales of beautiful vendettas. Drop a comment below with your favorite boss move from our new queen, and I will catch you guys in the next one.